Hello, welcome back. This is Jeff Byers, and this is modeling a low poly castle. I believe this is part 7. So I was kind of looking at it and I was thinking, everything looks pretty good. And then I see these little black areas here, little gaps. So it's just telling me that I'm too high on that area right there. So a couple things I could do is I could just move all of the faces down on here. I could move those down, or I could select the edges. Like if I double click on that edge and hit the Q key and just kind of select all these edges on the object and move them down. I could do that. That might do. Let me kind of do a test and see what that does. That's kind of cool, actually. That's kind of cool. So I'm going to continue doing that. Just select them. Now, because I have edges that are extruded out, it breaks the continuity of the edge loop, so I just can't double click on that edge loop. You're probably thinking, why don't you just do that? And you're correct, it should, but the continuity is broken when I have an extrusion from that edge. So there's no getting around it, but you just have to select them one at a time. Now, the cool thing is, though, there is continuity on this particular edge, on that edge right there. So hopefully I've got all of those in. Let me rotate around and make sure I got them all. Yeah, all those are selected. So if I move those down, that's great, but it leaves that part right there sticking up. So let me Control Z back. And what I need to do is double click on, hold the Shift key down and double click on that edge. And that should work, okay? And the only thing that's left is that vertex in the middle, because if I move all that down, it'll still leave that vertex in the middle there, and it won't move it down with the rest of everything else. Okay, so I'm going to go Control Z back again, and there's nothing I can do about that because there's no edge there. It's just a vertex by itself. So what I could do is, I'm going to show you something kind of cool, is I can change my selection from a edge to vertices. So I'm going to go to Select and Convert Selection, learning something new here. Select Convert Selection to Vertices. And if I do that, all the vertices are selected. Now I can go in here, hit the Q key, and hold down the Shift key and just marquee select that center vertex there, which is really cool. So now I can move them all down so they'll be even. I'm going to move, so I can see right in the angle here like that, and hit the W key and just move those down. Okay, and it moves everything down just so it kind of disappears like that. And I'm going to rotate around so there's no blackness, not black areas. Okay, that looks really cool. So I'm going to click on that. There you go. So you can see that all fits together now. Very cool. I'll do the other side. Okay, but that's how you do it. Very, very cool. Now, you may be asking yourself, well, there's that big cube right there. Now, it doesn't really fit together very well. Well, that's true, but you could, if you really were worried about that, you could delete that hole, make a hole there, just those pieces there, and you could use, and you guessed it, the last video I showed you how to use the append to polygon tool. I think it was the last video, maybe a couple videos ago. So I can make that, I can select it, and that's pretty easy to do. I can go to, hold down the Shift and right mouse button, and it goes to the append to polygon tool, and I can go ahead and select one corner and select the other side if I want to and hit enter, and there we go. Now the only reason why it looks kind of funky and weird is because the faces or the edges are trying, like I told you earlier, the faces try to soften. So I'm going to select those edges, hold the space bar down, go to mesh display and harden edge, and that fixes it just like that. So now we've got that piece right there fixed. Now the pieces aren't really lining up perfectly, they're not going to. If you're worried about that, of course, I can go to the top view and get really close and very particular about how these are fitting together. Okay, and as you can see, my wall is kind of not jiving with this piece right here. So I think what I want to do is move this piece around. So I'm going to go to vertex mode and just select the center and just get really close to this and move that around so it fits in there a little bit better. There we go. And you can see this doesn't fit real well either, this part right here. So let me do that as well. Just move that along that edge there, like that. Get it as close as you can. You're not going to get it exactly, but you can get it pretty close. Okay? Let me go back into my perspective, and that's much better. You still got a little bit of a gap there, and what you could do with that at that point is just make sure they are inside each other. Okay, so that will just fix that all up real quick. So I'm going to go to vertex mode, select all the vertices here, move them inside the other piece, and move this inside the other piece like that a little bit. And now we shouldn't have any spacing at all, any issues with spacing at all. There we go. Perfect. Looks good, or as good as it will get. I'm not saying it's going to be perfect. And so you just do the other side like that. I'm not going to do that right now, but you can get that all fixed up. You know how to do that. Okay. So do the same thing. Or you could take this and just duplicate it over and rotate it. That's probably what I'll do, because that will fix pretty much everything that I've got issues with. So Control D, move it over like that, and just do a rotate. And since I got that set up, I can just rotate it and move it into place just like that, just that easy. There we go. Work smart, not hard. Okay, so that's just little things that you're going to want to fix, and I showed you, and you learned about the append to polygon tool, learned how to do relative snapping with the snapping tool. There's lots of cool things you're learning in each video because I'm doing this on the fly. I've never modeled this castle before. This is just a one-time deal. I always love to do that because you can see my mistakes, and if I make a mistake, I go back and fix it. You can see how I fix something. So it's kind of cool. Otherwise, you don't see. You have a perfectly edited video, and I don't think you guys learn as much. You get to see my mistakes and learn from them too. So you don't make them, or you know how to fix them. So it's it kind of shows different tools come up when you do that, when you're modeling and stuff. Alright, so now we got to worry about a centerpiece. So that kind of looks like a square with these round pieces. So I think what I'm going to do is go ahead and create a cube, or maybe just take this guy right here, or maybe this guy right here, because that's got an entrance too as well, and just make that bigger. Okay, so I'm going to do hit the Q key and going to do Control D and move that back and just make that quite a bit bigger, and that will be another entrance, if you will, and just make some modifications so it looks kind of more fancy, more like a main building. And so I'll do all that. Okay, so I'm going to have to move that around maybe right to there. And another thing I like to do is to make this a little bit different, maybe add some other detail to it. Okay, so I don't mind having the door and the two windows, but we're going to make this quite a bit bigger. So I'm going to go to the top view and just make this physically bigger. So I'm going to go to vertices. I'm just going to move the outer wall out to something like this. This outer wall out to something like this. Okay. And the back wall to something like this. And then kind of go back and see what we've got so far. So we've got that looks about right. Okay. And then we're going to go to the front view and see the height of this. So we've got our windows in here. It's kind of hard to tell. I'm going to isolate this. So how do I isolate something? Well, I could put it in its own layer, you know, or, which I usually do. I haven't done that for a while. Or I can do a Control+1, and that isolates that object. Okay. The only problem with this is that it isolates it and I can't see anything else to guide me. That's okay. But notice if I go into my perspective, it didn't isolate it in the perspective because it goes by which window or viewport you're looking through. Okay. So if I go back to here, I can see that I'm looking through this, just the front isolated, and it even tells me on the bottom isolated. So it's isolate. I can do Control+1 again, so to show everything. So a lot of times I'll do a Control+1 and select the vertices I need to select. And I'm going to go to the front view, and you can see that I accidentally got the top of the windows. I need to get the bottom of the windows too. So let me get all the way down like that. Okay, and then select those, and then I can move those up. Okay, now you can kind of see. And then I can go take the isolate off, Control+1, and that's a lot of times I'll model like that. Okay, so you'll notice that these are quite a bit taller. Okay, these pieces here, but this and this seem to be at the same level. So let's take a look. This and this, that looks pretty good. So the height we've got, that looks pretty good. The height looks pretty good, and if I get it at kind of a different angle here, you can see that it kind of hides the back. Okay, if I want to go a little higher, I sure can. There we go, maybe something like that. All right, so the structure itself is good. We can add to it, of course. We can add to that, but let's go ahead and select the object that we have here. Okay, and I really don't want the top part anymore. Okay, so I'm gonna build on this. So what I'm gonna do is I'm going to go and hold down the space bar, go to mesh and separate. Now I can just select this guy, and I'm gonna go in center pivot. So I can go to center pivot here, I can go to modify, click on modify and center pivot, or I can hold down the space bar, go to modify center pivot, but I don't see modify in here. Yeah, there it is. Modify center pivot here as well. Okay, so there's several ways of center pivoting. The best way is just select this guy right here, this icon. And we're going to duplicate it, Control D. Sorry for that crazy explanation. And then move it. Okay, and then we need to just, because it's got this, it has the same shape. Why reinvent the wheel? Okay, so let's go in here and center that. I don't think it's any bigger. I just think it is taller. Okay. So let's go ahead and get that set up. And then let's go in here. And it may be thinner. Like it might be skinnier than that. So that sounds kind of good. Let's go in here. And let's scale it. So I can go ahead and scale that like this. Down. Okay, something like that. And then, okay, well, that doesn't really work for me. because it makes these little cubes on there smaller. I really don't want to make those cubes smaller on top. Okay. So there's some other things we can do. Okay. So I suppose, like, well, that's part of one of the issues. Let's go Control Z back. I could, yeah, anything I do is going to make them smaller. So I think I'm just going to have to maybe, yeah, we'll have to scale it down and then raise it up. So I'm going to scale it down just a little bit like that. Okay, and then from the front view, the problem is I scaled it without moving the pivot points. Let's go back. And I'm going to hit the W key and hold the D key and just move it down. Okay. And here's a little tip. If I'm like Control Z, if I hold the D and the V, it will snap that point to the bottom. So you don't have to guess. That's kind of cool. And so now I can scale this up. Now the D as in dog, V as in Victor. V as in Victor. So hold the D and V and that will allow you to snap it. Okay, I'm sorry, I didn't see. V may sound like another letter. Anyway, so I'm going to go ahead and scale that down. Not a whole lot, just a little bit. And then I'm going to isolate it so it's kind of hard to see. Control 1. And I'm going to right click over and go to vertex mode. And I'm going to move these vertices right here up. So I'm going to hit the W key. I'm going to hit Control 1 again. And then move that up quite a bit taller. And how much taller? That really depends on what your reference is saying. So maybe something like that. Okay, let's see what it looks like. That looks pretty good from my standpoint. That looks about right. Okay. And I'm going to duplicate that then, make it really easy on myself. So Control D, move it over. Of course, you know, I might need to rotate because the windows are like facing the wrong way. All right, so I'm going to center that onto the object like this, and then hit the E key and just rotate that windows like that. There we go. So it's rotated properly. Let's get the other side properly rotated as well. There you go. That's all I need to do on that one, I think. And then I will hit the Q key and Control D again, move tool, move it back, zoom in, my middle mouse button zooming in, and then get that set up. And then hit the R key to rotate again. This time I need to rotate them in that fashion. That looks good. And click on this one and Q key, Control D, and move that back like that. And get that centered on that corner like that. And hit the E key and to rotate. Just take your time. I may be going too fast for you. You can always, you know, this is kind of snapping in the wrong way. There we go. Finally got it to snap, and then it snapped too fast. Let me try that again. Snap. Snap. There we go. That's it. And it kind of goes into that wall. I don't really want that, so I'm going to kind of just like that would be fine. There we go. That looks good. All right, and the basic structure is finished. Now you can just kind of add detail, more windows if you want. You know how to do that. You can move windows, like that windows are too far down for those spires here. So I can select and go into this mode. I'm gonna hit the space bar and kind of get into this And then I'm going to turn off the layer for the reference. So I'm going to go Control A and then Control A again and turn off that layer. That way I can see what I'm doing. So I'm going to click on the vertices, select on the vertices here, and move those up. Now I notice that what Maya likes to do sometimes, and I haven't addressed this yet, but if I select objects, like if I had an object selected here and I select an object here, and if I'm over top of this object, and I go to vertex, it'll actually, it sees that object with my marquee selector. So what you want to do is, if that happens to you, click either on the object or outside of the object and go to vertex, and that way it will select those vertices. I'm going to move those windows up to about the height of the top of this, and of course do that with all the objects I can see here. Just move those up to that wall. And also I've got objects behind, which are very difficult to select. So I'm selecting them from the top, right click over it into the vertex mode, and I'm going to go and I make sure those are selected and moved up. Okay, go to the top view, click off, select your object, right click, go to vertex mode, and then go to the front view and move those up. So you can see that I'm just taking my time, moving those up, and that looks way better than it did. Last thing we want to do are the flags. So let's take a look at the reference again. Of course, we just have poles and flags everywhere. Of course, you can put flags. Let's just do one flag, and then you guys can do the rest. But I think we're looking really good so far. Okay.